Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builders Supply. This video is to bring you a closer look at the McKinney. This is their part number T4A3386, 32D, CC4 4.5. It has TMS on there as well, which stands for template machine screws. We'll explain that in a moment. And let's take a look and see what that hinge actually looks like. Here it is. Looks like a typical hinge, that's for sure. T4A3386, except this is a CC4. So this is a 4-wire hinge. CC would just give you bare wires on the back, and that's what this is. If you ordered a QC, it would have a quick connect, which works in the rest of the ASA Abloy QC ecosystem, whether it be exit devices, obviously, that you're going to connect to. You're going to be able to have a connector and run that wire back up to access control, your power supply, etc. Bare wires are one thing, not really a big deal, but the QC is most commonly where I see new projects specified. They want the connectors already attached. Exit device goes on, connector, wires coming out of that with a connector to the connector on the hinge, obviously connector to the auxiliary cable going up to the power supply or whatever it might be, other components, other loads and switches. CC4 is how this was specified. What's happening on this opening, I think it's just electric latch retraction. So it's just power is all that is on the opening where this hinge is going to. Looks like McKinney has an interesting way of machining the back side of the hinge to get those wires in there. Hinges like this are completely non-serviceable. You can't drive the pin out because those wires are literally going through the hinge. In some way. It's not evident to me how that wiring is being done. Maybe up here, down here, and then here could be how that's done. That might be it. Very nice clean look on the hinge, that's for sure. A UL label on the back. It's also important to know that this hinge would be considered non-load bearing, so you would never put this in the top position of your installation. Let's see if we can get the camera to focus on that a little bit better. Okay. Anyway, there you go. This is a T4A3386. Let's dissect that part number, but first it's a 4.5. That means that it is a 4.5-inch tall hinge and a 4.5-inch wide hinge. This is a T4A, which means that it is a heavyweight. And when we pull out the caliper, this should measure again 0.180. My caliper tells me it's 0.176. Yeah, 176, and that's certainly within tolerance. This is a heavyweight hinge, and the tip-off immediately when you look at this is that it has 4 bearing packets, and that means actually 4 oil impregnated packets. That 4 of them versus 2 means it's heavyweight. So where are you going to use this hinge? Let's talk about that right now. If you've not hit subscribe yet, we would very much appreciate if you did, and hopefully you're enjoying this video. Now let's get back to it. So where you're going to use this hinge is actually more of a 2-part answer. You're going to obviously use this hinge where you need to pass power to something. It could just be simply a request to exit switch in a lever or a touch sense bar. just something that would generally require two, possibly, well, three wires most likely if it's request to exit, which would be a single pole double throw or a Form C switch. 4 would be appropriate for that. So obviously some sort of requirement to permit low voltage current to pass from the securing area or some part of the door through the hinge back to access control, incoming power, things of that nature. So that's job one of this hinge. Why it's a T4A3386 is certainly because of the requirements of the mechanical portion of what's being done, not the electrified portion, which means T4A3386 in no particular order means several things. It means it's a 5-knuckle hinge. You can see that. T4A means it's heavyweight. We talked about that earlier. 3386 means a couple of things. First of all, it's meant specifically for a square edge door and non-ferrous. So this is a 32D or a 630 finish. That means solid stainless steel with nothing other than a brushed finish. So the fact that it's 4.5 by 4.5 tells me that it's likely a exterior door that is maybe heavier than standard, might be a 16 gauge door, and standard volume cycles over the door. And yes, you're doing some sort of access control on it. You might have, the ability to unlock the exterior trim to be able to come in, that sort of thing. But what's telling me it's a heavier door is the fact that someone has selected a thicker hinge. What's telling me it's stainless steel, it tells me that it's an exterior application. People will rarely order stainless steel just for the look of stainless steel, even though it is ordered for that look, and regardless of the base material, this would be an exterior door. This hinge itself is specified to be shipped on a job that is a water treatment plant, and it is an exterior opening, and they are wanting to... It's electrified trim is what it is. They want to be able to access control in, lever becomes active, allowing you to pull the latch bolt back. That's all that this one's for. Now, in terms of the height, maybe a little heavier than average, but 3 foot wide, not wider than that. If you get wider, like 3'6" and wider, you're absolutely going to want a 5-inch hinge and heavyweight. You go from 18 to 16 gauge, you start thinking of a thicker weight hinge as well. In terms of the width, what determined 4.5 inch in terms of the width is probably something that needs to be, not probably, it is something that needs to be determined. So the same scrutiny that you'll put to selecting the hinge in terms of height is the same scrutiny that you'll put to selecting the hinge in terms of width. And the formula for determining the width of the hinge is simply door thickness minus backset times 2 plus clearance plus inset plus clearance. So door thickness, 1 3/4, minus the backset, which is the amount of the door that's not been mortised for the hinge, typically a 1/4 inch. 1 3/4 minus quarter is 1.5 inches, times 2 is 3 inch. Plus the inset, this is a hollow metal door and a hollow metal frame, so it's basically a 1/16 of an inch. So now we're at 3 1/16. Plus the clearance. There is no clearance issue because the door only needs to go to 90 degree. If it needed to go to 180 degree, we would really have to think about what is the clearance. Is there some stonework that's on the outside of the facade, of the face of the building, that would prevent the door from getting to 180 degrees? Is there some sort of feature that's indicative of that opening that we've got to calculate that distance so that we move the vertical axis of pivoting out further so the door can get out and around whatever would occupy in that space. So again, door thickness minus backset times 2 plus inset plus clearance. The last thing that you need to know is you always round up to the next widest hinge that's available. If the answer was just 3 1/16, which it was, this would be a 4.5 by 4, because 4 is the next available size, and that would be the right size. 4.5 by 4.5 may not have been the right size for this. That's what was specified. It was brought to the the architect's attention in the submittals that 4-inch would be a better choice. They elected to stick with 4.5, 4.5. Okay, it's not best practice. You do want that vertical axis of pivoting brought as close to the face of the door as possible in all instances so that the function of the opening has been achieved, and you want to do that as elegantly as possible. This is going to include fasteners. That's the TMS portion of the part number, but what's interesting is TMS means template machine screw. If we pulled up this industry standard document inside of here, actually, if we pulled up this industry standard document, we're going to find TMS. TMS is specifically going to mean two template with machine screws. So what that actually means is that you're going to take a machine screw and you're going to install it into a piece of into a door or a frame, a door and a frame that has been drilled and tapped for that. TMS means that you're going to literally go into tapped threaded holes. But what's interesting, some manufacturers think that that means Torx machine screws, and they indeed did send Torx machine screws. I didn't ask for Torx screws, I asked for TMS. So it is always funny to me how industry manufacturers that are members of the greater organizations, even they still get it wrong. I don't need Torx screws on this. Will Torx screws be okay? No, probably not. Because A, it cost us more money, and B, certainly the installer is going to call and say, yeah, where are the bit drivers for these? I don't know what size this is. This could be T25. Don't quote me. But this can't go to the job because it's not on the submittal. It's not in the approved hardware set. So the installer is obligated to look at that and install it exactly the way it's been written. Nowhere there does it say Torx machine screws. So that would need to get fixed before it was sent out. Or you just say, hey, these are exterior doors. Torx machine screws aren't a bad idea. If drivers want to use these, they might say, yeah, we'll take those. Or no, send me the regular number 3 Phillips, which would be the appropriate thing. Another mistake, actually it'd probably be okay. These are not undercut head, these are just flat head. Undercut head are clipped in the bottom. They're clipped in the bottom of the undercut of the flathead portion of the screw. Because these are thicker hinges, you probably don't need to have them undercut, meaning they're heavyweight. Let's switch to the screen view and let's take a closer look at all of the supporting information. If you've not hit subscribe yet, we would very much appreciate if you did, and hopefully you're enjoying this video. Now, let's get back to it. Okay, here's the hinge that we are looking at. Let's take a look at some photographs that we have. There's the label, T4A3386, 4.5, 4.5, 32D or 630, CC4, TMS. The hinge itself. Nice and clean look on the front of it. This is a cross section that would show us what the swag or the bend on the hinge leaf looks like. That tells us that this is a full mortise hinge. Well, it tells us that it's a full mortise hinge for a square edge door, and I'll show you what that means in a moment. Close-up view of half of the hinge. That UL label is not mandatory on fire-rated doors to be on the hinge. All other hardware on a fire door needs to be labeled. Hinges don't have to be as long as they're compliant. Non-ferrous base material and ball bearing. Close-up view of that finish and the manufacturer's logo. I don't know what the W means. Admittedly, that's a mystery. Currently. The back side of the hinge. I would imagine some milling machine comes through and does that preparation after the fact. They may drill holes I don't know. At some point I'll ask the factory how they race the wires through there. Showing half the leaf. Green, red, black, white, and green is what they've got here. Showing the 4 wires. those Torx machine screws along with the installation instructions. Now, supporting documents. This document is actually included with the hardware. McKinney CC concealed circuit hinge. Just a power transfer hinge is what it is. It's a low voltage transfer hinge. There are air transfer hinges as well when you need to have hardware that is controlled. When you need to have hardware that's not mechanical and is not electrical at all, there are applications that are in areas that can have no potential for voltage at all, and compressed air is used in those cases. The McKinney CC concealed circuit hinge is an intermediate connector which allows for the passage of a constant flow of current between the power source and the actuated devices in the door, such as electric strikes, locks, exit devices, regardless of door position. The door and frame are to be prepared for a standard hinge, and then when we look at the template, you'll see where that preparation needs to be made in the hinge reinforcing plate for the leaves that go to the door and the frame. Um, 28 gauge wire, and the gauge of the wire is extremely important because you have to make sure that the conductor is going to handle the current that you're going to pass through it. Not so much the voltage as much as the amperage that's going to go through it. And to that end, they literally tell you the electrical rating is 4 amps continuous at 24 volts AC or DC. This hinge will handle 16 amp pulse for 300 milliseconds. Cycle time not less than 5 seconds. 10 amp pulse for 250 milliseconds. Cycle time not less than 2 seconds. Really important, otherwise you don't have thick enough wires is the bottom line. The CC hinge should be located in the second from the bottom hinge preparation on the door and frame. Do not try to disassemble the hinge. Serious damage will occur and void the warranty. We talked about that. Before attaching any wires, make sure that the hinge will fit properly in the mortise without binding or pinching of wires, etc. The method of attaching this material is a little bit different in the sense that you can't split the hinge leaves. Loosely attach the door leaf with one screw while the connections are made, being careful not to damage the wires on it. After connections at the jam side have been completed, push excess wire into the access holes in the hinge preparation while placing the jam leaf into place. Don't pinch or cut any wires. Make the connections on the door leaf as described above and attach with screws. Let's look at the next document. This is a cut sheet on the CC option. So this is going to talk about the fact that this is a power transfer hinge, an overview of it, available with most 2, 3, and 5 knuckle hinges, 4, 8, or 12 wires. Standard and heavyweight. You can do these out of brass, steel, and stainless. The electrical profile is available here. The CC option has 28 gauge wires. Well, it turns out that there are certain applications where you need to run more amperage through a hinge than necessary. Well, they have the CC-18 that will give you 2 18 gauge wires, and then the others, whatever it is, however many wires you order, will be 28 gauge. So you'll get one pair of 18 gauge wire. Can be used in combination or conjunction with the MM option, which is a monitoring option to know if that hinge is in the open or closed position. Mortar guards. 8-inch standard leads are standard on these hinges, meaning the length of the wires is 8-inch. You can do extra lengths, and you can do the QC as well, but this is the CC. So really informational page here for you. 4, 8, with the 18 option. 2, 6, and 10. I'm not sure why they put that out of sequence. Maybe just for what's common. 4 wire, 8 wire is common. 4, 8, and 12 when you've got just 28 gauge wires. They can't do a 12 on a dash 18 because they don't have enough room to want to run that extra pair of wires through there. Approved on fire rated doors in according to NFPA 80. This is the T4A3386 cut sheet. So this is the hinge itself. Now I had talked about the square edge. This is literally for a square edge door. If you have a beveled edge door, you're going to use the T4A4386 because that bend, the bend on the hinge leaf here needs to be different. The swag, the bend right here would be different if it's a beveled edge door, in the sense that rather than bending that leaf to achieve basically 0 degree, it would be bent further so that it's skewed back at the 3 degree bevel. That would be pretty typical. Actually, I have a drawing here of it. So this is going to need to get bent more when you need that leaf to go off, well, in that sort of scenario, rather than just square. This is going to need to be bent back a little bit. That's what we're trying to draw there. Options when it comes to the base hinge are listed here. Because this is a power transfer hinge, much of this really won't apply. Some of it won't apply. You can get a radius corner. Decorative tips, I don't think you're going to get power transfer hinge. Hospital tip, you won't either. Magnetic monitoring you can do. Basically 2 buried magnets that act as a single pole, single throw type switch. Well, actually a single pole, double throw switch. 3 and 7 stainless. Pardon me. 7 is ferrous based and 3 is non-ferrous based. Last document. This is going to be the template for the hinge. This shows you where to drill the holes for the CC option. I don't think this is the right document. Let's take a closer look. Yeah, it was not the right document. This is the proper document for this. And what tipped me off on that was the fact that the holes were not in the right location for the wires to come through. So this is going to give you the location not only of the screw holes, but where you'll need to prep for the wire raceway to go through. At the F dimension and the E dimension, probably going to be related to the size of the hinge. We would be down here. Okay, so we've got the T4A3386 CC. Gives you your E and F dimensions, 1 1/16 and 3/4 inch. 1 1/16 and 3/4 inch. Your hollow metal manufacturer, your wood door manufacturer would need to see this so that they can drill those holes. Obviously, if a wood door, well, whatever the door is, you'll need a raceway. So that information is really important. You won't just run low voltage wires through the door. There would be a raceway. Additional information important on here. Yeah, sure. You're going to most absolutely want to review everything. The swag line is important to know at some point, that dimension. And then we've got dimension, note 3. 3/4 inch recommended, opening and hinge reinforcing. 3/8 by 5/8 minimum. Note 3. Diameter of the hole, 3/4 inch recommended. I have to admit, I'm not really sure what they're referring to. 3/8 by 5/8 minimum. See note 2. 2-inch minimum for wood frames. You got a mortar guard provided by frame manufacturer, required on steel frames. When they say required, that means your steel frames must shield the low voltage wires from mortar making direct contact with those wires. 2-inch deep minimum. I would just see this as a 3/4 inch diameter hole drilled in the proper location. Opening and hinge reinforcing. what they might be saying is you need a minimum of 3/8 by 5/8. I only have ever seen round holes in those plates. And this document covers different hinge part numbers as well. Now, finally, there is a link below this video as seen here to the manufacturer's page, and from here you can pull up not only all of the McKinney products we sell by means of this horizontal navigation, but also a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full line catalog here, and then prior versions of the full line catalog. There's also a link on this page to their 1929 catalog, which if you wanted to see what McKinney was making 90 years ago, that would be the document. And the rest of this is all encyclopedic in nature. Let's wrap up this video on camera. If you've not hit subscribe yet, we would very much appreciate if you did, and hopefully you're enjoying this video. Now, let's get back to it. Okay, so if you have any questions on the T4A3386 630 finish, CC4, or any other McKinney product, please let us know. Obviously, a power transfer hinge is going to be used in a greater electrified opening, whether it be just simply request to exit or a much larger application where you have electric latch retraction, or you're controlling outside trim and you're monitoring latch bolts. Maybe you're monitoring whether or not a latch bolt is projected or not, or maybe you're monitoring the position of trim. Lots of monitoring is done. And when you're doing all this monitoring, you just need more wires. Generally 4 wires, you're just running power to something, or you're just doing like a request to exit or a REX switch. Because 4 wires, nothing really takes 4 wires. Something will take 2 or 3, and you always, you won't get a 2-wire hinge is the bottom line. I think someone makes a 2-wire hinge, but you'll always start with a 4-wire hinge. The people over at McKinney are pretty helpful, in fact. I've spoken to tech support there, and there's a gal there who forgotten more about hinges than most people have ever learned. That's to be sure. Any questions on this T4A3386 or any other McKinney product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you. Thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up. Please subscribe, and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.